Should
All
I
right.
go?
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We're back after 15 days of break, and we have come back with an exciting session which has been on the cards for quite some time. We have with us today Ajoy, Ajay Shaw. Ajay, if I had to introduce him, Ajay's passion and joy for wines began while working on a project on wines during his graduation days. An avid microbiologist, a biotechnologist, and a researcher in molecular biology, he returned to his love of winemaking. He was, in fact, the first Indian to get a diploma in wines and spirits from WSET London. And as early as 2007, he had started judging in many international wine competitions. Ajay has worked with Sula Vineyards for 18 years and reached the heights of Chief Winemaker and VP Winemaking under the tutelage of Rajiv Sawant. He has also had the opportunity to be part of 4 harvests, 2 in California and 1 each in Bordeaux and Burgundy. He is presently using his experience to advise different wineries on winemaking, improving the quality of Indian wines, and also working to make some iconic wines to come out of India. In his spare time, he writes about various related topics on his website, www.ajoyofwines.com, to convey his love and passion for wines. Thank you, Ajay, for being with us. I'm going to pass on the mic to you, and we look forward to this very interesting session, which ends with, I'm assuming, a wine tasting session.
Thank you so much, Tejashri. It's a pleasure to be talking to all of you here, and I'm just though I have what Tejashri said, that there's so much of stuff, but I'm still learning about wine because wine is a very exhaustive subject, and the good thing is you guys are in tourism, and wine tourism is a very big thing all over the world. And if you see my slide, I don't know if you, I hope all of you can see the slides. Yes. So
Yes,
I'm
Ajay.
just going to talk about the wine tourism bit. And before I start, like, I will just give a brief introduction about what exactly is wine. You know, people, there are many people who confuse wine with other beverages, and it is not like that, because in India, yeah, most of the people drink, you know, whiskey and rum and other stuff, but wine is actually the beverage which is made only from fresh grapes, or you know, of grape must. You cannot use anything, even if you make it from, say, apples or pineapples, it is not called wine according to the OIV. But yes, there are other words like cider and perry and some other things which they will be called like that. So it's an alcoholic drink made from fermented grape juice. So that's wine. And why is wine made? You know, uh, just like you have milk which you cannot store for a very long time and you can convert it into cheese, then it can stay for a very long time. Similarly, grapes are also perishable. So, and they are seasonal. So you get grapes only during a certain time in fall in Europe or in the northern hemisphere, and also in the southern hemisphere. India is slightly different, and it is from January to March that we get the grapes. So you have only a 2 months maximum window, so where you can get the grapes, and these grapes are perishable. So what is the thing you can do is you can get the juice out of these grapes, and then you crush that after crushing the grapes, and then you convert it into wine. Wine can be stored for a very long time. And in Europe, there has been a very long, like thousands of years, where wine has been part and paired with food. So it's become a part of wine culture there. So you can have wine, you can have food together. It's still not so common here in India to have a wine culture. We're still learning about wine, but yes, outside India there is. And what happens when you make this wine, when with the, so you have many of these grape components which get dissolved in alcohol and are beneficial for everybody. So there's something called as a French paradox, where, you know, French people, they eat a lot of red meat, they eat a lot of cheese, they smoke a lot, and still they are very, very healthy. So they found out that this is because they are drinking a lot of red wine and even white wine. So wine basically has all these beneficial components, and that's what is called a French paradox. That you eat a lot of stuff which may cause problems, but then because of wine, it's good. It's good for you. So the total wine production, just to give a figure, is about 30 billion hectoliters, or 30,000 million hectoliters. Hectoliters is 100 liters. So it's a huge, huge production, and it's made in all parts of the world. So the origin of wine has been made for thousands of years. The first instance of winemaking has been found in Georgia. Georgia is a very unlikely country, but they used to make wine in earthen amphora. So there were pots which were dug inside the soil, and they were kept inside to cool, for cooling, and the grapes were crushed inside that, and the wine was made out of the grapes in those kind of amphorae. Then from there, it spread to other regions and civilizations. Like you had, Egypt, Mesopotamia. There was Indus Valley as well. But there's not much instance of all that. The recent history is about 2000 years ago, where monks in Europe, they modernized the different methods, and then it became a part of the culture. It also become a part of the food table, because wine is much more safer than some other uh, um, than water, because water had a lot of issues, and there were a lot of problems in the with water. So people used to drink wine instead of water, and along with food. So that's how it became a part of culture. And then each region traded with their part of the wine, their quality of wine, with some another region, and that gave a regional identity. So you have Bordeaux, you have Burgundy, you have Rioja in Spain, you have uh, Tuscany in Italy. So there were different regional identities which came about. So where are the world wine regions? So if you see, world wine regions are between 30 to generally 30 to 45, or 30 to 50 degrees north, and 30 to 50 degrees south. These are the bands actually which has the best temperature conditions, where you can uh, grow the grape wines, and then make wines out of that. And it's very, very easy. But if you see, India is not in the picture there. India comes much lower than that, and Nasik is even lower. That's because we have a different climatic condition here, and we are adapting to our climatic conditions. So what are the main wine regions where business is done around wines? So if you go to the northern America, you have Napa, you have Sonoma, you have Oregon in the north, and then if you go to Canada, you have British Columbia. So these are the places where, which are much very, very scenic. If you go and visit Healdsburg, or if you visit Napa downtown, you will see it's a beautiful, beautiful area where there are a lot of wineries, small wineries, which are dotting the highways, next to the highways, and there is a beautiful terrain, gently sloping wine terrain. And there are a lot of movies which have been made in the wineries, like A Walk in the Clouds. You have Bottle Shock, Mondevino, and Hollywood film stars also own a lot of properties there. There's a Napa wine train which goes, and from I think from San Francisco down to Napa, and then you can visit different wineries there. Similarly, if you go down to Australia, you have Sydney, which has Hunter Valley. So if you go north, you can do Hunter Valley. If you go to Melbourne, there's a beautiful Yarra Valley. It's mountainous. It's a not very mountainous, but it's hilly and it's beautiful. It's got a nice weather, maritime climate, and it's got this beautiful uh, weather out there. And you can see beautiful wineries dotting the entire area there. Similarly, if you go to Adelaide, then you have McLaren Vale, you have Adelaide Hills. Adelaide Hills makes some of the most wonderful wines that are found anywhere. So these are some of the pictures. I hope all of you able to hear me.
Yeah, Ajay, maybe if you could speak a little bit louder, I think it should be
Okay,
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 but we can see you and hear you well.
okay, okay, okay. No, I can't see anything, so it's a little difficult for me to understand. Okay,
We can
so
hear
these are
you.
some of the pictures, like from Napa Valley. Napa Valley is really, really beautiful. I've had the chance to not to work in Napa, but a sister valley called Sonoma Valley, and both of them are equally picturesque. Like you can just be there, and you can never get bored. Unfortunately, now we have this year they are facing a lot of wildfires there, and many of the wineries are in really bad shape there. But it's a beautiful uh, place to visit. You can visit there with your friends, family. Just hop on and just visit a lot of wineries, and every winery will have a cellar door where you can go and taste the wines. You can buy the wines and take it with you. So it's a lovely, lovely thing which you can do, and that is uh, very important when you're trying to sell the wine, because each wine is different. It's just like cooking. Like if you have one particular kitchen, it has its own style. If you have another kitchen, it has its own style. So you can use the same ingredients, or and here even the ingredients are different, because each parcel of land with its soil, its typical microclimate is completely different. So you can make wines very close to each other, but still the wines will be completely different. The grapes will be different, and that's the beauty of wines actually. So there's a lot of variations and there's a lot of choice. So you're spoiled for choice. So in Europe, there are many other countries, like Italy, France. These have been making wine since thousands of years. Tuscany is, you must have heard of, like there are many, celebrity weddings happening there. Sicily with its Mount Etna, which you have, like it's a beautiful region with the slopes and the black volcanic soils. These are some of the most famous regions there. There are movies again made in wineries there in Tuscany, and there are wineries all over the countryside, and you can just take your car, you can just visit wineries, and they will have local food to match with the local wines there. And it's so amazing that the local food will always match, so you don't even have to think about anything. You just take the local wine and the local food, and you can sit on the table and you can have the food. Similar thing is there in France. France is, everybody knows about French wines, and there are wine routes in Alsace. Alsace is on the border of Germany and France, where you can just keep on driving and driving. There's a north route and there's a south route, and you can visit some of these Grand Crus. Grand Crus are the best vineyard sites which are there, and you can just visit them and keep tasting. So you get Riesling, you get Gewürztraminer. These are name of grapes. And similarly, there are, if you go to southwestern France, you have Bordeaux. You have Champagne in the slightly northeast of Bordeaux, where you can, Champagne is some of the most expensive wines that you can buy. Like in India, they are upwards of 8,000, 7,000, 8,000 rupees a bottle. So these are very, very classic wines which you must have seen that they use it for celebration after winning a game or a championship. So that's how they celebrate. And it's said that, like, when there's a newborn baby, they will just give the baby wine and they will just
Ajay, are you here? I think we briefly lost Ajay, ladies and gentlemen. Kindly sit tight. I'm sure we'll have him back with us.
share the video. Germany, you have this beautiful river Rhine, actually, which goes through all the wine regions, and you have sloping slopes, mountainous slopes on both sides, and there is slate, the black slate, from which the light from the river gets reflected on the slate, and then that provides heat for the grapes to ripen. And this is an amazing terroir. Terroir is something, the climate, the microclimate, the landscape, which gives the quality to the grapes. So Germany is very beautiful again. And you can always take a cruise on the River Rhine, and you can stop at different uh, uh, ports, and then you can just walk down and visit the different wineries. And that's amazing, because that's how you can see different wineries and taste. And all of these are beautiful. There are castles. So you can, Europe by itself is very beautiful, just like you. Okay, so you have put your the other one, the slide thing there.
Yeah.
So yeah, meanwhile, I'm just trying to attach this file here.
No problem, Ajay. Let's just continue as is.
Okay.
It's okay.
Okay. So yeah, so this is all about, the different wine countries outside India. But what's there in India actually? If you see in India, there are different regions. So it's not a very big wine making country compared to, say, Europe, or say North America, South America, or Australia, the continent of Australia. But it is quite. Just a moment. Yeah, still there are different wine regions which have their typical characteristics. And what you have is like Nasik, which is in the main wine region, where you have the major number of wineries which are there. And so you can visit Sula, there is York, there is Soma. So there are so many different wineries where you can visit. There are almost like 35 different wineries, but most of them are not tourism friendly. But visitors can come in, like Sula, for example, you get almost like 4 lakh visitors coming to Sula every year. And there's Wallonie. Wallonie is again has a beautiful. Uh, so Tejashri, you can hear me, right?
Yes, Ajay, we can hear you.
Yeah. Okay. So it's a beautiful vineyard out there. You can see Mount Kalsubai, which is the highest peak from there. And then you can visit small boutique wineries, like there is Nifa, there is York. York is just on the bank of the Godavari. Sula has got a beautiful view. They have a beautiful, vineyard out there. In front of the winery, there's a big hospitality center. Similarly, if you go down to Bangalore, so there are many vineyards there, about 10, 12 wineries there. Soma, which is just on the outskirts of Bangalore, that's a very nice place to visit. They make very little wine, but the vineyards are beautiful. There's a big lake out there. If you go down to, say, Grover, they have a new building and a hospitality or a tasting room where you can taste the wines. Then you could go down to Hampi, where there is Charisma wineries. You have SDU. There are so many different wineries which are all over the place, but they are much lesser and fewer than what you have in Maharashtra. There are other regions, like you have uh, uh, you have the like Ratlam, where there's a winery there. Then you have some wineries in the northern part of Bijapur, which is there. So all in all, there are about 75 to 80 odd wineries in India. And these also, they are good for tourism. And then there are different things for which people go to and visit wineries. So I will try to cover that first before we move on to how to taste the wines. So yeah, I don't know. Tejashri, have you received the mail yet?
Yes, Ajay. Just give me a minute. I will quickly check. So, Ajay, in the meanwhile, I just wanted to check with you. We've seen you've spoken about the wineries that are there in other countries, and we've talked
Right.
about the wineries that are there in India.
Right.
What do you think what do you think is the reason apart from just the weather? I mean,
Mhm.
what do you think why wines have not become as popular as the Scotch whiskey or Scotch or whiskey or any of the other hard liquor that we have seen? I mean, that we have in the
Yeah,
country.
the main reason is because India, India has been exposed to India is really warm, and in India the food is very spicy. So people tend to, along with spicy food, they will try to drink something cooling like water or you know buttermilk or whatever things. So wine that way has not gone still like, and it's not been popularized till since early ages. What has been happening is people wanted to get a value for their money and they want to get high faster. So that's why they chose spirits which had higher alcohol rather than having something more sophisticated like wine. And for a lot of people, wine is a little complicated. They think that, oh, I don't know the name of the grapes, I don't know what is in it, and how do you taste it. So it's a little complicated for them. So I think that's the reason why wine has not become a.
No,
But
that's
I
so
think over the last years, I think things have changed, right?
Yeah, it has. I'm sure. I mean, with the number of wineries that you just mentioned, we have about 80 odd wineries,
Yeah.
wineries and vineyards. I wouldn't have imagined that at all, like
Okay.
being that way. So yeah, I'm sure it has become a lot more popular. But another question comes to my mind. When we
Mhm.
have Sula in Nasik, which has like a huge resort and a hospitality setup,
Mhm.
they actually they seem to be the only ones who are actually doing it. Why do you think that is? Especially with now people knowing who have become more well traveled, they go for wine tours in other countries and they come back and they compare. So how why do you think that
that is
is?
going to help us in any way.
Yeah, so the reason is Sula has been the pioneer. So they have put big hospitality, and they understand that hospitality is very important. In branding. In India, you still cannot advertise for alcohol, so that's the reason they started Sula Fest. They have done so many different things so that that can create branding. There are other wineries also, like Soma, for example. They have a big resort there. York doesn't have anything, but then Wallonie has rooms where you can stay. Fratelli near Pune, Akluj, they also have a resort there. So the only thing is different between Sula and other wineries is they are not marketing the hospitality part as much as Sula is doing. And the good thing about Sula is they are doing it through Sula Fest, and anybody who visits goes back. Word of mouth publicity is very, very important, and probably they have a tie up with companies like yours, and that also helps.
Yeah, I get. I
So
completely. Yeah, I think that
yeah,
makes a lot of sense for sure.
yeah, yeah,
Right. So let's get to reasons why people visit wineries. I think that's where
yeah,
we stopped.
yeah. So you can see the different reasons. Yeah, you can have, you can visit, you can taste different wines, you can have pair it with food, you can celebrate at the wineries, you can have weddings, you can have engagements, you can have parties, and it's a different setting altogether because it's not your regular restaurant where you go there and you can order some food. But here this is it's like a cool environment. There's calm around, you have beautiful picturesque vineyards in front of you, so that creates a completely different ambience. So that's the reason why people would prefer to go there. you know and then you can also compare, like you can taste, like if you go winery hopping, like 2 3 wineries, you can see like this particular grape or this wine I like. So you can make your own choices, so you can choose like, okay, this is the wine I like, and this is from this particular winery, and you can buy. You get a lot of discounts as well because the wineries save a lot of money for not transporting the wines to the shops. So you get a lot of uh, so you can save on buying the wines basically from these wineries. Okay, so yeah, so yeah, you can go through the slides maybe. It's just to sum up, like there are wine dinners as well. You can have wine dinners. There could be special occasions where, you know, like on a special day, like, okay, there could be like pairing, there could be a food and wine festival going on. So you can pair different things. You can get, you can have like, you know, parties where you can have your friends, families coming together, and then you can pair it with cheese, pair wines with cheese, you can pair wine with the local food. So there could be so many different options. Basically, you can just visiting there itself is a stress buster. Basically, you just, so you can see there was some of the last slide, probably the one, two slides before, I think, one more. Yeah, this winery, that the pictures you see at the bottom are from Robert Mondavi. This is in Napa Valley. This is supposed to be like one of the most famous wines from California. And so each winery has its own unique, you know, architecture. You can see that this particular winery, you cannot see anything from the outside, but when you go inside, it's completely hidden by the, so it's like a mound, and below that you have the winery. So you have cellars, you have barrel rooms, you can take pictures, you know, nowadays with cameras, you can have selfies, you can have so many different things. And they are really an amazing place to go because it's completely different from your normal, you know, routine, mundane kind of things. So that's the reason why people go to and visit the wineries. Yeah, you can see different events. Yeah. So as you said, like how do you taste wines? I think a lot of people might be, you know, little shy as to say like, how do we taste wines? You know, when I started working with wine, a lot of people used to ask me like, do you have it with a glass of with water, or you add an ice cube to it? So things have changed quite a bit from those days. So the I can say that there are 5S. You should remember this 5S of tasting, which is called, you know, I will go through each of these S's. Like the first one is C. So if you see, I've got a glass of wine in my hand, and the first thing you do is you look at the color of the wine in the glass. Okay, so there are different things like which can the wine can tell you. Like if it's a white wine, when you start off, it's very light in color, almost colorless to very pale straw yellow, and then as it ages, it becomes darker and darker until it gets brown with age. So when you look at the color, you can tell that, okay, what am I going to expect? Like if it is paler, it's a fresher wine, it has more acid, it means it is more fresh, it's fresher, it's tangier. And as it ages, it becomes, you know, more, you will get more of the secondary aromas. You will start getting things like, you know, which is, as the wine ages, will give a different character to the wines. Similarly for reds, what will happen is you start off with something really deep purple, and then as it ages, it starts going towards brown. So from purple, you will start getting into red, and then you get to brick red, and then you go to brown. So based on just like food, like if you see red color in your food, you can tell, okay, maybe there's a lot of tomatoes in there, or there is a lot of chilies in there. So same thing, this wine gives you a hint, basically the color. When you see the color, and then you get a hint like, what am I going to experience? And it should match. So if we go to the next slide, we so the next S is swirl. Why do you need to swirl a glass of wine? See, swirling a wine is a little difficult. I think if you are not comfortable, you can put the glass on a table and move it around. What it does, it mixes the air with the wine, and when it mixes and you stop doing it, the air goes up again and it goes up to your nose. So this brings out all the aromatics in the wine, and then you can smell it much better than compared to like just putting your nose into the glass. It doesn't smell so good. So swirling is an important part. Basically, you are trying to put air into the wine, and that air then comes up and brings the aromas to your nose.
I personally have a lot of trouble swirling the wine. Like when I went to one of the Sula vineyards near
Mhm.
Bangalore and we were doing the wine tasting, this was the one thing I could never get right. And I finally ended up spilling half of the wine on the table. So, is there a specific technique to it how you could get it right, like gradually to really swirl
Yeah,
your wine?
what you can do is you can put it on the table,
Mm.
the glass, and gently turn
Just
it
move
all
it
around in
around.
circles so that
Mm.
does it. Initially, you will have to do it like that for maybe until you drink a lot of wine, and then
Not a
you
good
know
idea
it's
to do
fine.
it in the afternoon in that case.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So next you go to sniff. So once you swirl the wine, you need to take those aromas in. So put your nose deep inside the glass and take a deep sniff actually. So it will bring in all the aromatics. And there's nothing right or wrong about what you're going to smell. So you don't be like, okay, somebody says, no, it smells like, strawberries. Somebody will say, no, it smells like raspberries. So there's nothing right or wrong about things how it should smell, but yes, you cannot like say something which is like uh, which is quite different. So you can say it smells like fruits, and basically it is something that you identify with, and you have been smelling so many different things from right from childhood till now. So you have to just put a word to it so you remember it for yourself. It's not for others to know or whatever. You can remember it. Oh, I can smell it, like, okay, it smells like, strawberries, or it smells like mango, or whatever, it smells like melon. So whatever it is, you just keep a note onto it. And I've given some things like, okay, does it smell sweet, does it smell spicy, does it earthy, does it smell. So you can have a category also. You may not say the you might not identify the fruit, or is it smelling like flowers, like white flowers. So you just put a category to it and remember it, so that when you taste a similar wine later on, like say Chenin Blanc or Zinfandel, these are names of grapes. So if you smell it, then you can identify, oh, this is similar to what I tasted in, say, York or Sula or in Grover. So you can just put a name to it,
Hmm.
and you have to make a mental registration that, okay, this is what it is.
So again, I have a question here. So when
Yeah,
you say the common aromas are fruit, flowers, earthy, wood, herb, spice, how
yeah.
do these aromas come into the wine? Because mainly it is made out of grapes. So
It is
how do you
made out of
bring in?
grapes, so nothing is added on. So
Right.
all the aromas are present below the skin of the grapes. So when you're crushing the grapes, all this will come into the wine. So just like you have different types of mangoes, like you have the sherry, you have hapos, you have whatever. Chosa. There are different types of grapes, and each grapes has its own typical signature, its typical fruit profile. So based on that, you can judge, and you can identify the aromas. And the way the wine is made can also be identified. If you find it's really nice and pleasant and gives you really good fruity aromas, then it's a good wine. If it's giving you really bad characters, like something stinky, or some like rotten eggs or whatever thing, then of course the wine is not good. So that's basically to identify. And it's like food again. So I make a lot of comparisons with food. If it smells nice, you want to try it, definitely. So that's how it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And then the fourth step is sip. So yeah, after you do all these things, see, swirl, sniff, then you want to really taste the wine. Like it's been a long time that you haven't. So you just taste it. And there's a technique of tasting this also actually. So you take a small amount. Don't take the entire glass, gulp it down. Just take a small bit and rotate it all around your mouth. And if possible, just take a small amount of air along with it. So you make a sound like, so I will show you like,
Yeah.
so you make you take the air along with it. So what it does is basically it takes all the flavors to all the different parts. So there are points on your tongue where you can taste bitterness, sweetness, sourness, and you can also get the weight of the wine. So all this needs to be judged. Of course, for a somebody who's starting on wine, it is very, very difficult. But as you become an expert, you can start tasting all this. But you can see there is some acid there, there's some sweetness there, And all of this should be in harmony. For a good wine, all of this should be harmonious. There should be a balance. Nothing should feel out of order. Like either it is too sweet, it's too sour, it's too acid. So sour is because of the acid from the grapes. Like you have grapes that will have tartaric acid, like in tamarind. So it will. So basically, you are going to try to see that everything is in balance, and and after this you see everything is harmonious, balanced, and there are pleasant aromas that are coming, then you know the wine is good, right?
Yeah.
And how do you know the wine is very, very good or average or bad? For that, you have to do the next step, which is savor. That's the last step, where you either gulp it down if you're not driving, or you spit it out if you're driving. And so when you take it down and you wait for some time, you will have the flavors remaining on your palate for a very long time. That's called the finish or the length of the wine. So for a great wine, you will have a very, very long length or a long finish, and it will be pleasant. While for an average wine, it will be very short, and then and you don't, you know, you don't like it so much. So that's how you judge. So these are the 5S basically on which you can judge a wine, and that's how you taste. And just keep making mental notes whenever you taste, and that's how you learn. So when I started, I also didn't know much, but yeah, in the last 21 years, I have learned something, and I'm sure you guys can also do a great job. Indians have got a very good palate, and I think everybody can taste wine. There's nothing so complicated about it.
So when you talk about the last step, you talk about savor and spit. So what is the story behind spitting wine out when you're tasting it? It's a very absurd sort of practice.
The thing is, sometimes when you're making wines or tasting wines, you might taste 20 wines or 30 wines at a time. So if you continue to drink it, the last wine will always be the best, because you're already, halfway drunk. So so you won't be able to taste anything after that. So the best way is to spit it out and then, carry on with the other tastings. Yeah. So that's the reason why you spit it out.
Okay, great. With this, we come to the end of the presentation. Thank you so much, Ajoy, for being here with us. We're really sorry about the last minute glitch that the glitch that we had in between, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah,
but thank you for sticking around. Thank you for sticking around. And I hope that you've all enjoyed the session. We are now open to question and answers. Ajoy is here for a while, and he'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have. We'll just wait for a couple of minutes, Ajoy. It takes some time for the questions to come in. But yeah, okay. So one question that I have to ask before we've not got any questions. So I'd like to ask a few questions to you. I know you worked with Sula for 18 years, right? Mm-hmm. So this may not be the best question to ask, but which is your favorite wine?
It's very difficult to choose, because it's like food. Like you can't have one particular food. Like, so same thing. Like I don't have a particular.
No. I think we've again lost Ajoy. He should be back in a minute, but please take it up when he's back. Okay, hello. You're back.
Yeah. Did you get my answer, or didn't?
No, it kind of got cut off in between. But yes, I think you can.
I think there's a big issue with the network today.
But yeah, we expected. So.
Yeah. So I was telling that there's a region in northern France, Côte Rôtie, where there's a blend of Syrah mixed with a small amount of white called Viognier, and that makes something very nice, floral and perfumed wines from reds. And then good Riesling from Germany. That would be my favorites.
Okay, great. So we have a couple of questions that have come in and now, and I'll take them up one by one, Ajay.
Yeah.
There's Chirag, my colleague, who asks which all grapes are best available in India for a wine. So I think he's talking
Uh,
about Indian grapes, if one they can be used, or which are the ones that are imported into India and are being used currently for the wines.
Yeah, actually, there are no Indian grapes as such. Most of the grapes are European grapes which are planted in India. So you have Syrah, you have Zinfandel, you have uh, Cabernet, you have Tempranillo, you have Grenache, you have. So there are different Chenin Blanc, Sauvignon Blanc. These are names of grapes actually. And in India, the grapes that are used are very are mainly for table purpose. So they will make very neutral wines.
Okay.
So it all depends on what you like rather than what somebody would advocate, which are the best wines. But I think Chenin Blanc makes very good wines. Your Shiraz are quite good. Cabernets can be a little challenging depending on the wine regions. So, but these are the best wines you can drink in India. And Sauvignon Blanc also is quite good. So you should keep on trying. See, like today there might be an extra. There might be 10 wines for a particular variety which may not be good, but then there could be one which could be very good. So
Good. Yeah.
you should keep trying, I would say.
Yeah. And I think it's
Yeah.
very fast, like the way they keep changing. Every wine bottle, when it's bottled, is a different taste, even though it may be from the same variety of grape, right?
Yeah, between different years, it will be different. It
Yeah.
shouldn't be from the same year that they should be different because then there's a problem with the winery
Right.
not maintaining proper conditions.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So when different years means 2017 should all be the same, 2018 should all be the same,
The same.
2019 if they have put it on the label, then all of them should be the same.
Right. Thanks, Ajay. Next question comes from another colleague of mine. Madhubanti asks, can you tell us a little bit about desert wines such as ice wine?
Desert wines are very, very unique. They are made by different techniques. Like you can, like ice wine, for example, where the grapes get frozen completely. So the weather conditions are such that they turn into solid ice, and then when you press, you get a very small amount of juice, which is concentrated in sugar and acid, and then you get this very nice, ripe, sweet wine. And even after fermentation, there will be a lot of sugar which is left behind. Similarly, when you make it in other regions, like when you get there's a fungus which grows on the grapes called as noble rot, and that will concentrate all the sugars and acid, and it produces this wonderful wine with orange blossom aromas. And those are like sauternes and tokai and some other wines made from Riesling. And so those are very, very sweet, but they still have very high alcohol. So you might be tempted to drink a lot, but then the combination of alcohol and sweetness is
Doesn't
dangerous.
really
So
go. Yeah, it is.
yeah. So and
I'm
then
sure
there
a
are
lot of us have experienced it.
yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
then there are late harvest wines, which when you pick the grapes really, really late, and then the sugar is high, and so there are different types. And yeah, there are sweet wines, but unfortunately, they don't pair well with Indian desserts. You should try it with some kind of uh, pastries or some other desserts rather than Indian
Indian
desserts.
desserts. Yeah. Another question from Chirag, who asks, do we have rosé in India? Rosé wines in India. Are they
Yes,
manufactured?
yes, rosé wines are manufactured. Rosé wines are basically pink wines. So in French, they call it rosé. And pink comes from very slight contact with the skin. So you get only a pink color instead of getting a red.
I think Ajay got disconnected again. Kindly bear with us. I'm sure he'll be back in a couple of minutes. Yeah, Ajay, I think we just
I
lost you
think
again
we
for a
again
bit.
lost you. So did
Yeah.
you get the answer or no?
I think we just heard about how what the minimal skin contact is
Okay,
what
so
we left it at.
yeah, so roses basically is produced by everybody, and it's perfect for warm afternoons, and it goes very well with Indian food as well. Spicy curries. So most producers like Sula, York, Fratelli, Soma, everybody has a rosé.
Yeah.
Maybe they are not available, or they are not pushing it so much because there's not so much market for rosé, and people want to drink red because of the perceived health benefits.
I guess. But anyway, okay. Uh, the next question that we have is from another colleague. His name is Kedar. He asks, generally one gets a kick after a glass of wine. It hits you more than hard liquor. Why is that?
I think the thing with wine is you have to drink it very, very slowly. You can't gulp wine because people think, oh, it's got only 12%, 13% alcohol, and people just, empty or,
Chug it down. Yeah.
so they drink it like, drink the full glass and very fast. You should go very slow, have it with food, and even when you are in an event, go slow, really slow. And and what you do is just like any other drink, you can have a lot of water in between, because water is very, very important to keep you rehydrated, because alcohol dehydrates you. So you need to have a lot of water in between as well. And don't mix it with the wine, but yes, keep on having it on the side. And it's go slowly, have it with food. And the reason why you get drunk faster is because the volumes it goes slowly into your bloodstream, and it will stay for a very long time. That's the reason. So even people who consume a lot of whiskey and all, they find it difficult to understand. They will think that's very less alcohol, and they will try to gulp it too fast.
Yeah, I
So
don't think I would have ever thought of it that way, but thank you so much for, giving that
yeah.
insight, and thanks, Kedar, for that question. He also asked a very interesting question about red and white wine. They're supposed to be at different temperatures. Red wines are usually at room temperature, and white wines are supposed to be, put in the fridge. And they're supposed to be frozen, basically. So how do you do that in Indian weather? Like, considering that, how do you actually store wine?
Yeah, actually, whites are not frozen, but they are quite chilled. Like you
My bad,
serve
yeah.
like a champagne for about 8 to 10 degrees, and then you have to serve your whites at around 12 to 15. And reds are also not room temperature. They are to be served around 16 to 18 degrees, which is like ambient temperature, say in Europe and other cool countries. So you don't serve it at room temperature. So you always need to serve the wines chilled. For storing the wines, I would advise like you can use an old refrigerator where you can set the temperature to around 15 to 20 degrees. That's the temperature you generally store your wine bottles. So the wine stays fresh, because the thing with wine is the wine continues to age even after it is bottled. Like your whiskeys, if it's a 12-year-old, it will stay like that for many years. 20-year-old, it will stay like that. But here, when it ages, the wine continues to change. It evolves in the bottle. So you will see that many people buy cases of wine, and then they will pick one, and from the best wine regions, they will pick one wine bottle and test whether it is really ready to be drunk. And then that's how you do it. And it's better to store it in the coolest part of your house, or you can keep it in an old refrigerator where the temperature setting goes up a little bit. Never store it in the freezer. If you freeze a wine, it will throw some particles. Those are not bad, but then it doesn't look good aesthetically. It will not be good. So it's better you keep it in a around 15 to 20 degrees without much exposure to light, or that's what I would do.
So I have a question here to add on to this. A lot of some wine bottles come with a cork, and some wine bottles come with a cap, like a
Screw cap,
bottle.
yeah.
Yes, yeah. So does that make any difference when it comes to aging of wine that you store at home?
When you have a bottle with cork, you have to keep the bottles always lie sideways. So because the cork becomes wet, and then it bloats up, and then will not let any air to go in. If you keep it standing, what will happen is the corks generally dry out and air goes inside, and that will spoil your wine.
Right.
So it will, when wine and oxygen come together, it will start turning into vinegar. So we don't want, you can still drink it, but you will not like it. So that's the reason cork bottles with cork always have to be lying on their sides, while screw cap, you can keep it anyhow. Like you can keep it standing, you can keep it on its side sleeping. So there's no problem with that. And these are, there's no difference between it. Corks, if you don't store it well, they can be a problematic. But screw cap, because in India people still don't know how to store the wine bottles, it's much easier and easier to open because you don't need a corkscrew.
Yeah.
So if you don't have one and there are guests, and then there is a problem, or you're going on a picnic and you take a bottle and there's nothing to open it with, then you can't have it. So it's better to use screw cap in those conditions. And Indian conditions make it more convenient for screw caps, actually.
Yeah. Yeah. So I have a question from another colleague of mine, who Anurag, and he asks, why does red wine make your mouth feel dry while white wine doesn't?
See, red wines are made with the skin in contact. So what you're getting is also tannins coming from the skin of the grape. So just like you boil your tea for a very long time, you can see that it starts coating your teeth. And so these tannins are basically drying your mouth. And they are also dry in, most red wines are made in a dry style, so they don't have so much sweetness. So they will also bring out the water from your palate, and that will dry out your mouth as well. So that's one of the reasons why red wines seem to be a little drying. They also have more tannin, but there's no difference in terms of alcohol. You can make white wines with 13 or 14% alcohol, the same with red wines too. Only thing, it's lighter. Red wines are heavier. So if you compare water and orange juice, you can see white wines will be like water and red wines will be like orange juice. They are slightly heavier on your palate. Otherwise, there's no difference. It's only the tannins which are, so pulling some water. Otherwise, there's no other difference.
Okay. Thanks, Ajay, for that. So I have another colleague who asks, so he's never been, his name's Jayanto, and he's not been on any, he's never done a wine tasting session in his, and he would like to know if there is anything in specific that you would like to tell him to look out for when he goes on a wine tasting session.
Yeah, so basically focus on the 5S, I would say, and just, you don't have to be like very, very focused kind of thing, very serious, but then you just take in, and if you're going to taste maybe 5-6 wines, try to take a few sips only, I think. So then you don't need to rinse glasses in between or something, but it's like, I wouldn't say there's much to a wine tasting. Basically there's nothing much. Like I would say 5S, you just be relaxed, enjoy, and you don't have to see. There's a little bit of wine snobbery there, and you don't have to fall for it. You just do it the way you want, and you try to understand the wine and the more you taste, the more you learn. So there's nothing so serious about it.
Yeah. As long as, I mean, you don't drink a lot of wine, and if you're driving back, then definitely don't have a lot of wine. Be sure when you go for wine tasting, you're pretty much, you don't have any responsibilities when you're doing it. Right. Okay. Next question is from Benny. He asks, what is the ideal way of consuming wine? Should it be complemented with cheese or any other food item? Should we choose wines according to weather, season that we have for a fulfilling experience?
Yes, you should. It's up to you. Like, what do you like? So you can, like you can have a Riesling with a vada pav. You can have so it depends on what you like, and there's nothing like a written combination. So you can pair it with whatever you like, and you should try with different types of food. Yes, white wines and rosé wines are perfect for warm days, and maybe red wines are good for, cold during the cold time. So that's a general thing, but there's nothing like that. You can't have a white wine on a wintry day or something like that. There's nothing like that. So you choose whatever you want. It's like food. Like if you're in the mood for eating, some Thai food, you go for Thai food. If you want to eat Indian food, you want to go for North Indian, whatever. So that's how it is. Like you just choose what you want and what you like, uh, and keep trying. I think that's very important with pairing food is you keep trying different things. And the thing is, generally, like there are either you can contrast the taste, like you have a slightly sweet or off dry rosé, you can pair it with a spicy curry. If you have, so these are contrasting flavors and tastes. If you have if you have the other way around, you can have similar kind of flavors and tastes as well. So either you have same thing or you have different. So if you have really fatty food, like something really buttery, cheesy cheese, then you can use a fresh acidic wine, so that will cut through uh,
Fatness
the
of it.
fat. So
Yeah.
so these are things, and there are different types of, you will get a lot of stuff on the net as well, where how you can pair different types of cheese with different wines. And generally you will have a pairing. So like if you know which kind of wine you are having, you just type it in and you can get most of the things on net. But generally, softer cheese goes well with, white wines, and heavier, harder cheese will go with your red wines. That's the
Hmm.
thing, standard
Yeah.
thing, but may change sometimes.
Yeah. So there's another question from another colleague, which is quite relevant to this question, where he
Mhm.
asks, do you have any specific accompaniments, Indian accompaniments that you would recommend with a red or a white wine?
Oh, it's there are
Specifically
so many.
Indian, I mean, Indian wines, if you look at it, I mean, is there, I mean,
So
you could give us an example maybe so we know what, like, you talk about red curries and
yeah,
what
yeah.
wine would
So
probably go with it.
so as I said, spicy curries, it's always better to have something like a rosé, which will, with some sweetness, very slight sweetness, so that it will balance out and clear your palate. With something like barbecued food, which has got a little bit of smokiness to there, that you can have some reds, so that will go much better, like your Shiraz or your Cabernet. If you have something which is proteinic, like your kidney beans or meat, uh, that you can pair with, again, with reds. And if you have lighter starters, like something like bruschettas or pasta, then white wines will go much better. So you have, so lighter food, not heavy food, that not too much heavy, and that will go well with whites. And reds will go with your meat and with barbecued stuff. And that's what I would say. Like, this is, if you want to have something like starters, I said Riesling goes very well with lot of Indian foods.
Okay.
So you can pair it with, say, your onion pakoras. You can pair it with
Never imagined that combination, but it's good to know.
yeah, yeah, fried prawns or something like that. It goes very well. So
Okay.
well, it is
That's
a lot of.
that's that's good to know. That's good to know. Okay, so here's a very serious question, Ajay. A colleague of mine, Pratik, asks: you mentioned promoting alcohol is difficult in India, and hence it's
Right.
not so popular when it comes to the touristy circuits. But why is it not promoted as a career option in India to gain popularity?
Again, career option is because there are many other reasons. It's not only just, see, first of all, what all the wineries are now doing is to promote wine as a drink, and take that market share away from whiskey and other hard liquor is quite difficult. And it's slowly happening. Earlier it was like very little, and wine was in one corner of a party. Now wine has come center stage. Like, there are parties where the wine bottles finish faster than spirits. So things are changing, and because of this, there are more and more wineries coming up. And so till now there is not so much job opportunity, but yeah, there will be more and more coming soon, because many people are now interested in starting. And the youngsters in the country are also, looking for drinking something which is perceived much more healthier, and which you can, it's more like a social drink rather than getting drunk or something like that. So things are changing, and probably this will create much more um, avenues for people to get jobs, and people start working in this industry. So that's but you can work as interns and all. There are, during harvest time, people this has started off late, like last 3-4 years, like where you can go to a winery and probably work for a month or two and learn about winemaking. So you could do that, but getting a serious job, yes, it's a little difficult, but it will happen probably soon.
Yeah. But do we have educational institutes in India which would kind of bolster this career
Yeah,
path?
there are educational institutes. There are courses run by Pune University, uh, and there's a institute near Pune called VSI, which trains students, and then there is a institute in Nasik which does a diploma as well. So you have a couple of things, and then you can do online courses. There's University of California, Davis, where there's an extension. You can do courses online through their extension counter. So you can do a lot of things with online right now. And but the best thing is to visit and learn.
Yeah.
That's more important.
Thanks for that, Ajay. Okay, one more question from a colleague. Rashmi, she asks, can one visit vineyard throughout the year, or is there a specific time from the tourism point of view, and why?
Generally, you can visit any time of the year, because wineries would welcome anybody to come and uh, and they will show them around. But sometimes it's better to go during a particular season. Like if you go during harvest time, you can see all the activities, different activities happening. You can see grapes on the grape vines. So it depends basically when you want to visit. Of course, there are sometimes like you have your own. There is a special event. If it's a birthday, you cannot go on a different day, so you have to go on that day. And so they will always be welcoming, and it's good to contact the winery beforehand, and they will let you know, like, okay, is it open or not. But generally, I think nobody sends back any people, only because of this corona times. Now there is a little problem, but hopefully things will be back on track. And
Yeah. So Ajay, here I think one critical point that we did miss is, what is the harvesting season for grapes in vineyards in India?
in India, the harvesting season is from January, mid-January or end of January to end of March, and sometimes early April. So February and March is what you can consider,
The
and
best
that's when
time.
you can visit and have a look.
Yeah.
Yeah, there will be things like stomping of grapes. There will be so many things which the different wineries would conduct, and you can see what's happening actually during this time.
Okay. Okay. A question from a colleague who asks, this is a question from Sura, and she asks, why do you think aged wine are so expensive? And if you had to choose between red wine and white wine, what would be your pick?
So not all aged wines are expensive. The best, see what happens is when you make wines, 99% of the, or 90s, maybe 80, 98% of the wines are made for fresh drinking, just like, so you make it, and within the first 1 or 2 years, you should drink it. There are only maybe 2% or 3% of the wines which are meant for aging. And the wines are made in a style that they will age and get better. So it's a myth that all wines age and become better with age. So it's not true. And yeah, if you have a really very expensive wine which ages and gets better, then definitely it will be expensive, because you have to make it in a style, and these are rare to find. So that's why they charge a huge money out of it. And the kind of complexity, the kind of aroma, the kind of flavors that you will get out of these wines are amazing, because when you taste it, say after 6 years, 8 years, they might taste different. 10 years they might be different, and 15 years they might be different again, and each might have different levels of complexity. So that's why they charge a very And then storing the wines also. When you're making these wines, you sometimes store for a longer time in barrels. Barrels are pretty expensive, and storing cost is high. So all those costs are added onto your bottle of wine. So that makes it expensive wine as well.
Right, right. So we've extended our time by 15 minutes almost. So I'm going to take only 2 more questions now and then we'll
Sure.
call it a day. So a question that I'm going to take is from Sonal, who asks, are Indian wines like Sula or Riviera relatable in taste to any of the famous wines world over? If yes, then to which one?
Yeah, so I would say like there are many wines like if you see Suda has been listed in the wine enthusiast top 100 wines list. Couple of their wines have been listed there. So Dindori Shiraz. So the Shiraz that is produced by Suda, the Rasa Shiraz, Dindori Shiraz is quite relatable to some of the Australian Shirazes. Not exactly, but yes, there are certain regions, and you can. The thing is, with wine, you cannot.
Sorry, that's we've just
Yeah,
launched the
rating.
polls. I request everyone to fill it in. In the meanwhile, we'll continue with the question and answer sessions. Yeah.
Okay, so uh, the thing is, you have each wine region is completely different. So even if I say it's similar to the particular region, it may not be, because the conditions, the weather conditions, the temperatures, the climate is completely, the soil, everything is different. So it's very difficult to compare, yes, but quality wise, say if you uh, talk about in terms of points, Indian wines, there are good Indian wines which come between 89 to 90 points, which are like some of the premium level wines which you can find anywhere in the world. So it's like, yeah, the number of wines that might be there might be maybe 2 or 3 or 4, but it's there everywhere as well. Like if you go to Europe, not all the wines are good. So you
Yeah.
will have so many different wineries, but only there will be only Chateau Petrus will be only one, or there will be some other winery which is going to be only one. So considering that, yes, we also have some good wines. Like you have Rasa, you have Sete, you have La Reserva, you have Dindori Shiraz. So these are the red wines generally which will age, and definitely white wines like your Sauvignon Blanc, Chenin Blanc, which are incomparable. Like there are some wines which are as good and maybe better than some of the wines in terms of white. The only thing is, yes, we don't have produce enough, and we don't export so much. So that's
Yeah.
the reason why you don't see the comparison too many times.
Yeah, yeah. But I'm sure that's going to be an upward trend very soon.
Yes,
Yeah,
right.
yeah. Okay, so I'm going to take the last question for the day, which comes from Akriti, and she asks, she says, thank you for the virtual wine tour. She asks, can a wine bottle, which is about 10 or 11 years 10 or 11 years old, can it be consumed now? She got it from South Africa and found it during the lockdown, so she would like to know your expert advice.
Yes, you can always have a bottle of wine. The bottle of wine is safe to drink any time of the. The only thing is, if it has been stored well, you can have great expectations out of it. If it's not stored well, yes, just be uh, keep your fingers crossed and open it and drink it. So I think
You'll never know
I
till you
think
try,
it should be,
Akriti.
yeah,
So
yeah. I
yeah.
think it should be okay. The thing about wine is it never spoils, so
Yeah,
it will be there. But yes, you might like it, you might not like it. There are a lot of people who might not like aged wine. There are a lot of people who like aged wine only. So it depends on your personal taste. So
yeah.
just go ahead and open the bottle.
Bottle.
Yeah, just
Yeah,
if it's a red wine, yeah, you need to decant it. Maybe you need to put it in a vessel so that it breathes, because it's been lying for 11 years. So all the gases that have formed inside, that just blows away, and then you can take it in your glass. For a white, I wouldn't decant it, but you just keep it open for a little time with the screw cap or the cork open, and then you can drink it. So no
yeah.
worries.
Perfect. Okay, Ajay, sorry, but I'm going to ask one last question because this is really interesting and even I'd like to know it. So,
Yeah.
what is the difference between a varietal wine and a regional wine, and what kind of wine does India produce?
Varietal wine is when you have the name of the grape variety on the label. So if you say Chenin Blanc, Zinfandel, Riesling, these are names of grapes. So you have the grape variety on the label. If you have a Cabernet Shiraz, it's like a Cabernet Sauvignon and a Shiraz blend of grapes. So that's a varietal. When you have a regional wine, it is like if you know, like suppose you say Bordeaux. Bordeaux can use only Cabernet Sauvignon, Cabernet Franc, and Merlot. These are the three grapes only. So they will never mention the name of the grape. They will say Bordeaux. If it's a
Right.
red, if it's a white, it is Sauvignon Blanc and Semillon. So they will
Right.
not say. So it will say Bordeaux white, Bordeaux red. Then it becomes very confusing. This is confusing for new drinkers because they don't understand whether when it's a regional thing. And old world wine countries generally they will put the name of the region because that's what they're famous for. Like Champagne. Champagne has Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, and Pinot Meunier. These are three grapes. That is the only three grapes they can use. So they will never mention the name of the grapes unless there is something on the back label which will say that the name of the varieties. So
Yeah.
that's the difference between regional and varietal. So old wine regions generally put the name of the region, while new wine regions like Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, Chile, Argentina, they will put the names of the grapes rather because nobody knows the wine regions there yet.
Right.
So
Right.
so
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
how it is.
Awesome. Okay. I'm going to leave you with one question. Like, I'm sure everybody wants to know. Tell us the three Indian wines that you suggest people to try. That's my last question, I promise.
It's it's very difficult to say. See, if
Preferably
you're a
red.
young,
Sorry. You were
hello,
saying?
Preferably red.
preferably red. So
No,
red.
there's nothing like that. Just three wines that you would suggest, red or wine,
See,
or
if you
even
want, if you're
rosé.
starting onto wine, I would suggest starting off with white, like a Chenin Blanc, like off dry, like it has some sweetness. So either from Sula or from Grover or from York or Soma. Generally, most Chenin Blancs will have a touch of sweetness, and that is what you will like because otherwise you will not enjoy that tangy acidity that is there in the wine. For rosé, I think any wine you can pick. For a red, I think again lighter reds are something which are preferred by young drinkers who are starting off. So like something like a Satori from Sula, say something lighter. Uh, so something like a Merlot or something like a
Yeah.
Zinfandel, which are lighter in terms of varieties. Even like a Syrah, like a Cab Syrah. Cab Shiraz is like it will be made in a softer, smoother style of red rather than making it really very complex or complicated to understand. And then if you want to go for something really nice and expensive, then you go for something like Rasa or Sete from Fratelli, or you can go for La Reserve from Grover. So these are the expensive wines which are made in a good way, but then they require more understanding, and then you need to really have it with food, and that's how
Appreciate
you
it.
can enjoy
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks a
Okay.
lot, Ajay, for taking so much time out of your busy schedule and do this session for us. It's been very, very insightful. It's unfortunate that we lost you a couple of times in between, but well, that was expected. But thank you so much again for being a part of this, and I'm sure we'll keep in touch for more information on Indian wines. Thanks again for being with us.
It's a pleasure to be with all of you. Sorry I didn't individually take your names when you asked the questions, but it's thank you for the wonderful questions. Yeah, there is actually we should have many more sessions like this because that's how you can promote wines, because nobody talks about wines. Sula has
Absolutely.
done a quite big bit in expanding, on the wine knowledge. But there are maybe, I think Bangalore, Karnataka Wine Board is also taking a lot of initiatives, doing wine
Yes.
festivals. So I think more and more with restaurants and maybe tour operators like you helping out, I think maybe there will be a wine culture in 5 to 10 years down the line where people talk about wines and it's something to talk about.
Let's hope sooner than that.
Okay.
Yes. Okay, Ajay. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Good day.
Bye.